No, because what are these other books gonna be about? Court is the fourth book in the Covet series by Tracy Wolff, which started out as a paranormal boarding school story, and then in this book, very much so veered off into its own thing. It's got vampires, werewolves, dragons, you name it. But there's really not much I can tell you if you haven't read the first 3 books, and I really just want to dive right into this one because we have so much to discuss. This book was so unhinged. Goodbye to people who have not read the first 3 books. I tried my best to take notes while listening to this audiobook, but I swear every chapter was just like a completely new twist and turn. Not to mention that this book really felt like the end of the series. As I was getting to the end, and I had like 2 minutes of the audiobook left, I was like, this feels complete. I feel like we don't have anywhere to go except for a story about rebuilding and maybe, you know, actually restarting the gargoyle court, but there was just like nowhere else to go. I do have theories about the next book, but as we approached the end, I really felt like it was a conclusion. So I'm wondering if maybe this was originally a 4-book deal, like a contract for her. I'm not exactly sure when this came out, but I would assume that this was post-Twilight Rush. So 4 books would make sense, and then upon its success, maybe that's where we get the next 2 books. That being said, a lot happened in this book, and we started out on a very low note. We are back at Katmere trying to regroup after the battle that happened right at the end of book 3. And that means trying to decide whether or not we're going to call Lucas's parents. He's one of the members of the Order, and there seems to be a 50-50 shot that Lucas's parents are in league with Cyrus. We really don't know. We're trying to regroup while we're at Katmere, but it's really, I feel so bad for these characters because they really don't get any type of rest. Grace is woken up out of her sleep by this mental voice going on, and she finds out that it's the Gargoyle King. That is the unkillable beast from our last couple books, and he time travels her back to the gargoyle court so she can see what it was like in its full glory. At this point, we think we're in present day, but the gargoyle court itself feels very medieval. He pretty much wanted to show her all of this to not only show her that there are more gargoyles, and he was also wondering why she can't hear them, because at this point, he believes that she should be able to hear all of their minds. That is something that drove him like crazy when he was the unkillable beast, was he could hear all of the gargoyles asking for his help. But I feel like at this point, he's like super unhelpful. A while back, he gave her the crown tattoo when he was still the unkillable beast in the cave. And so that means that she is queen over this entire court, and her grandfather is introducing her as such because apparently she's his granddaughter. We do see a lot of skepticism from the gargoyles, which was kind of to be expected. Like, Grace is freshly 18, and they have been stuck training for 1,000 years. She's not exactly the most impressive queen to come and try and get them out of their situation. But we don't get to spend a lot of time there, and Grace ends up going back to Katmere, and apparently in Katmere, like, 2 minutes has passed, but she was there for like 30 minutes. So we're getting this time warp depending on where you are. But now we know that there are like thousands of gargoyles out there. We don't get to really stick around and talk about this because the werewolves are attacking Katmere for Cyrus, and we have to go to the witch court, which Macy thinks is gonna be their safe haven, but they get turned away. So when we get turned away, Grace is like, oh, actually, I have a court. We didn't know this because she thought she was gonna have to build from scratch. So they go to the gargoyle court and there's ruins there. Grace like confirms that she had gone sort of back in time, but kind of not really. It's where they're frozen. I feel like it's this weird third dimension, and we never discussed that because time does pass in the gargoyle court even though they're frozen. So maybe it hasn't been 1,000 years. Also, we go off on this side tangent of Hudson wanting Grace to take his powers. By the end of the book, I sort of understood a little bit more because he can just snap everyone out of existence. A very useful trait if you're going to be fighting an army that is 1,000 times your own size. And later on we find out, you know, like snapping people out of existence, they sort of take a part of his soul with them. So I can understand that now, sort of. But at this point in the book, I was like, Hudson, why are we even talking about this? Like, you're our best weapon. It was very frustrating that he wouldn't just tell Grace exactly why he wanted that. He also tells her that the green string that she has, like these little power strings that she's able to pull on, the green one might be to the gargoyle court, which thank goodness, because earlier when we saw this green string, I was like, there is not a chance that she's like second mated to Jaxon. Like it would have been, I would have not have been able to continue with the series if that was the case. But originally her string with Jaxon, it was green with the black coil around it, which was the bloodletter's magic. But it was green, and so when this green string reappeared, I was like kind of panicking, but luckily we think that that is not the case. We go visit the bloodletter and we find out that she's Grace's grandmother. Did not see that coming at all. It makes sense now why Grace's parents would have gone to the bloodletter to talk about hiding Grace's powers from her and stuff, because that would have been Grace's mom going to visit her mom and like talk about this and know that her mom could help in that situation. And the bloodletter is talking about the way that the gargoyles are frozen. The reason they're frozen is because of Cyrus's poison. So he poisoned one gargoyle, which poisoned all of them because they're somehow mystically connected. And they are frozen in time, which is something that she did, so that they don't have the poison spread. If she was to bring them back into our regular timeline, the poison would spread really quickly and they would all die, all gargoyles. And she's like, since you're connected to all these gargoyles, maybe you can push your power through the strings. A lot of this book was very vibey, like just trying to understand what the strings really looked like. I think I have a good visual, but she's like trying to collect all of these silver strings connecting her to all the gargoyles that she just now found. And she's trying to push the poison like out of the gargoyle system and back towards Cyrus. In doing this, she rips a hole in time. I can't say that I saw this coming at all. Having gods mixed with supernaturals in this way was really interesting. Father Time shows up and he is a god, and apparently Grace is a demigod, which there's so many twists and turns. Grace is a demigod, so when she's trying to push this poison through the gargoyles who are stuck in time, she rips a hole in time, and Father Time has to knit it back with like actual knitting needles. While he's doing so, he's listening to One Direction, the same song just over and over and over again. And I love that the author loves One Direction, but the amount of mentions of One Direction that have happened in this series is just like wild. So obviously we're a little worried about Grace continuing to try this path of pushing the poison back, especially if it's not gonna work, and especially since Father Time has now threatened her, like, do this again and I'm coming for you. We find out about these like tears, and they're also the elixir of life, and somehow that's supposed to help us. I was very confused by this. Like, were we supposed to like dump the tears on Cyrus? I didn't fully understand why we were going to get those. I know that we needed them, and I just kind of accepted that and moved forward in the story. We're gonna have to compete to try and win the tears, and when we show up to do that, we find out it's like worse than Ludaris. Like, this is gonna be the worst game ever. 2,000 people have tried it, they've all died, but you can take in your crew. And so we were gonna all go together and do this, and we took a break, and we were going to rest up and go play this game, get the tears, and try to use them to defeat Cyrus. Unfortunately, overnight, half of our crew went to Cyrus, because I understand, like, they have friends and family who are trapped with Cyrus, and there's a very heavy chance that a lot of them are being tortured, and they don't want to just sit around and do nothing about it. But at the same time, because they left, we cannot compete in this trial, because like it's even greater chance that they'll die. So we all go to Cyrus's court. And I was like, this is just such a weird side quest. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this book, but there were so many choices that the characters made that I was just like, what are we doing? As we're dealing with the shock of them being gone, we find out that Cyrus kept Hudson in a coffin for 100 years, because the longer you bake a baby vampire, the more powers they get, at least in this family. They were giving him some sort of medicine situation to try and pull those extra powers out of him. The same thing happened to Hudson's sister, who we met in this book when we went to go visit Cyrus. This girl comes out and she's like just giving Isabel from the Mortal Instruments. And so like I am immediately gonna kind of like her, even though she's a horrible person. This is the person who Cyrus can use to drain other people and take their powers. That is one thing we were very worried about as part of Cyrus's torture, was that he was going to be draining kids of their like supernatural energy and absorbing it for himself because he wants to become a god himself. Macy's mom is there with Cyrus. I feel like a crazy person going through all of these different notes because there's so much that happened. But Macy's mom is there. So we find out that Macy's mom had made a deal with the crone. She didn't hold up to it. So she's been imprisoned by Cyrus for the past however many years. Like, Macy has thought that her mom was dead for a really long time, and her dad hid it from her. He knew where she was. At first we thought that maybe, you know, she was on Hudson's side, but it's very clear that she's been imprisoned this whole time. And it's kind of unfortunate because we're like, oh, you get imprisoned and tortured if you break a deal with the crone? Because fun fact, Grace just made a deal with the crone, and her uncle's like, you did what? So we're all imprisoned at this point. We could have gone and played Ultimate Ludaris and won these tiers, but now that we're all at the court and we've all been imprisoned and taken in by Cyrus, we get taken to the main like banquet hall or something, and Cyrus is there and he's like, why do you think I knew every single move you were gonna make? Like, why would I have sent people to the Unkillable Beast's cave? Like, why would I do that if I didn't have intel? And Grace is like, somebody is a traitor. I was like, obviously somebody's a traitor. Turns out to be Liam. Now I feel really bad because I just simply did not really care about the rest of the Order. Like, I love Jaxon, and I know that the Order is like his little posse. Like, they're a group. And so it was really like upsetting to him that Liam would have been a traitor and been turning them into Cyrus. And I do feel bad that he got drained of his soul by Izzy. Like, that part wasn't fun to read, but at the same time, it didn't hit the same way it would have if like Jaxon was the traitor. Cyrus tells Grace, if you don't want to watch every single person you know get drained of their soul and him like absorb their powers, it was really gross, then she needs to go get the God Stone for him because that will allow him to become a god. Every day that she is gone, he's going to drain another person. And she's like, you could not possibly expect me to do that by myself, so let me take my friends. And Cyrus is like, fine, but you're going with a chaperone, Izzy, my daughter, who is like a horrible person, but also like very cool. I loved her outfit. She comes out, she's just like covered in knives. And I was like, this is gonna be fun when she comes to our side. Now that we have this whole squad, we're gonna go play Ultimate Ludaris. Cyrus will let everyone go if she brings the Godstone back to him, theoretically. And they go to the gargoyle court. I can't say the word gargoyle. They go to the gargoyle court, and this time they do it correctly. They're in the right time zone. And that means that they actually have 6 days to find it. We think the Godstone is there, and we have 6 days to find it because of the way time works, which was really good because I was like, I can't imagine that we're gonna do this in 24 hours. Like, these children have not slept in days. While we're there, we see everybody training, and then we also find out that every night this skeleton crew is attacking them. And it's because whenever a gargoyle dies in this weird mid-animated space where they're like stuck in time, since they're stuck, when they die, they're not really dead. They just end up becoming part of this skeleton army. And Grace is like appalled that this is happening and that every night it seems like a couple of them die because of these attacks, and then the people who die become part of the army. And so she is like begging Hudson to like Thanos snap them all. And he really puts up a lot of resistance before he does it. And when he does, all the skeletons like snap out of existence or whatever, but it's almost like it doesn't matter because they're gonna come back anyway. And then I don't know if I just didn't understand it correctly, but Hudson now kind of fesses up to the fact that when he snaps people out, he loses a piece of his soul with them. Like, he sends a piece of his soul with them. And the way it was described made it seem like it was a voluntary choice. I was like, Hudson, just like stop giving them a piece of your soul when you do this. If our big concern is that he's gonna eventually do this so many times that he doesn't have a soul anymore, just stop it. Stop it. Get some help. Like, are you just gonna lose your soul because you're like nice and you feel bad? At this point, we figure out that the trainer, Chastain, who, by the way, hates Grace, has the ring. And inside the ring is the Godstone that we need, that we know he's never gonna take off, because if he has the ring, he knows what that stone is. Grace, like, challenges him for it, and she's trying to fight him, and it's very clear that she's not going to win this fight, because obviously she's been training for 5 days versus a guy who's been training for 1,000 years. And I know Grace is cool and all, but there's only so much you can do. And so she's like, well, I'll just like pull my demigod card and freeze everybody in their frozen time. It's like layers of Inception. And once she freezes him, she's like, I'm just gonna take the ring off of him and we will disappear. But when she tries to do this, the gargoyle string and like her demigod string are too close together. So she like accidentally plugs them both. And it's back to the future. Everybody comes with us back to normal time, and immediately like all these thousands of gargoyles start to like groan in pain because the poison is now like continuing to move through them. And like it's just all such a mess. And Chastain, the main guy, Grace is like, the reason I brought you here was like sort of an accident, I just need the Godstone. And this guy is like, absolutely not, like over his dead body, which is not going to take that long. He's ordered all of the other gargoyles to freeze, so now we're just a bunch of statues because that will stop the poison if they're stone. I don't exactly remember how we got the stone. I know that Chastain didn't want to give it to her, but I know that we ended up getting it. I forgot what that conversation looked like. But when we get there, we're also sort of like softening towards Izzy right now, Isadora. And Grace gives her the ring because she feels bad that like she's been under her father's like control for so long. She's like, you really, you don't have to do this. But she sort of feels like there's no choice because, as we find out, she was locked in a coffin for like a gajillion years as well. Same way that he did with Hudson. And so she knows that if she doesn't obey him, she's going back in there. And so Grace, sort of as like a peace offering, is like, if you give him the ring, like that's really gonna, endear you to him. Whatever. Anyway, she gives Cyrus the ring. And then Cyrus is like, I don't have to let your friends go because I said Grace had to give me the ring. And I was like, are you freaking serious? Like, be so for real right now. Like, I was so annoyed by that. It was very much like how the fairies are in the Mortal Instruments and like the very specific language that they use to like trap people. And I was like, that is so annoying. And so everyone is still stuck. And then when Cyrus, I don't know, leaves, goes somewhere, we see Queen Delilah come out and she hates Cyrus. And so Grace is like, hey, Delilah, let's make a deal. I'll help you get your revenge on Cyrus if you let us out. The queen is like, sure, after a little convincing. And she lets them out. And then we're almost out. And then Rowena can't come through, her aunt, Macy's mom. She cannot leave the vampire court now because her promise to the crone has not been fulfilled. And so everyone's like, let's go on a side quest and fulfill Rowena's promise to the crone. We could not stay on task, like at all. Luckily, so the promise to the crone was the crone wanted Rowena to bring her daughter back. And Rowena's like, who's your daughter? And that was a huge problem. And luckily, Grace had briefly frozen Cyrus. And she entered his memories and heard Cyrus talking about the fact that he had had a relationship with the crone and they had a child together. And like, fun fact, Isadora is also a demigod because she is the crone's daughter. The crone, we have found out, is a god, by the way. And also the bloodletter, we have found out, is a god. There was so much going on. So we now have to take Isadora to the crone. Obviously, she's not gonna wanna go because she has never done anything willingly in her life. And so Grace tries to freeze her, but Isadora, remember, is a demigod. And so she decides that while they're frozen, she's gonna take Grace to go see her parents on the day that they died. Like, she's bringing them back to this memory. Sort of how when we were in the prison, it's the same thing from the last book. That we enter this memory and we relive it over and over and over again. And Grace is having to watch her parents have the conversation right before she enters the room that they were gonna try and tell her about being the gargoyle, but they weren't sure and they were kind of fighting about it. Apparently, they have been giving Grace this tea her entire life, and the tea suppressed the gargoyle powers. Very clary-coded. And that's how they've hidden it this whole time. But they're like, it's not going to work forever. Like, we have to tell her. We have to send her to Katmere. So that was the plan the whole time. We find out, like, during this conversation, that Rowena is the one who made a bargain with the crone to get the tea for Grace. And so now Grace thinks it's her fault that her aunt has been like tortured for the last however many years. The first time that we're watching this fight, it seems like we're getting the actual events of what happened, and then as we go each time it gets worse and worse. Like when her parents walk in, she sees all of the injuries from the car accident, and every time they repeat, like the argument gets louder and worse in a way that like her parents would never have yelled at each other. And it was a really hard scene, and Isadora's like, this is gonna keep happening until you unfreeze us. And Grace tries to hold on as long as she can because she's like, I know that me and Isadora are frozen in real time, and hopefully by now, Hudson and the others have gotten us to the crone so that we can fulfill Rowena's promise. As soon as we get there, Isadora is like not down for that, so she just goes back to Cyrus. But at least Rowena's promise has been made, so we can take her out of the vampire court. This means that everybody's gone. Luckily, we've gotten all the prisoners out, and that means that we can go rest in the witch court for 0.2 seconds because we brought their kids back, which was the only way that they were gonna give like sanctuary to our crew. At this point, Rowena's like, yeah, your mom was a witch. Rowena says that Grace also has like a little bit of a witch line going through her too, so she's like, yeah, you're part witch. And I was like, what isn't Grace at this point? She's gargoyle, she is witch, she's demigod, and like I'm not completely sold on the fact that she's not also going to become a vampire at some point. Like I feel like it has to happen. Apparently, Grace had lit a candle with her powers, and that is indicative of her being a witch. Apparently, gargoyles shouldn't be able to do that, can't do it, because, you know, she, as a gargoyle, can control the earth for sure, and, like, sometimes the air. Felt like she was, like, becoming the last airbender. At this point, Remy and Calder show up to help us out, and I was immediately clocking Remy and Isadora as mates. The way they talk to each other, the way they, like, kind of pressed on each other, sort of in a competitive way. Like, obviously, it seemed like Isadora was, like, not down for it, but knew. Like, I felt that so strongly, and it was never confirmed. I was like, could we please, like, the way he was, like, joking with her, I love that dynamic. I wanted more of that so bad. I was, at this point, getting vibes between Eden and Calder. Also, between Jaxon and Flint, which I did not see coming. Like, obviously, Flint's boyfriend died in the last battle in book 3. Jaxon, obviously, heart shattered from, like, not being mates with Grace anymore. He knows, like, the bloodletter told him what she did about the fake mating bond. So he has to know that there's another mate out there for him. And I don't know if we ever got any confirmation that Flint's relationship was a mate relationship. So, like, theoretically they could be together. I feel like we would have seen any type of, like, slightly romantic relationship between them beforehand. And now we knew that there was feelings on Flint's side, but Jaxon, like, never gave any indication of that. And so it kind of came out of left field a little bit. But they were also both, like, very much bonding over the fact that, like, they have lost a lot of people who are really close to them. Like, even, like, closer than Grace was with them, for sure. And so I was wondering, like, are they just leaning on each other, or is it like a romantic thing? And it seemed by the end to, like, really solidify as, like, they are in a relationship, but they weren't fully telling people yet. We go to play Ultimate Ludaris. There's, like, the impossible trials. 2,000 people have tried, 2,000 people have failed, and we're gonna do it because we're a special crew. That was the only reason. They're like, yep, we can do this. I was like, are you sure? It's like puzzle after puzzle, but, like, Fear Factor edition. There's one level where they're just covered in these bugs, and one level where there was some sort of creature type thing. It was very scary. There's a lot of screaming going on, and they all have to be separated into their little chunks to do each part of the puzzle. My favorite part of the games was when they had to take these potions. So I was like, oh, like, one of them's getting poisoned. For sure. Like, we're gonna lose somebody at this point because nobody has ever gotten through this. Like, everybody has died through these games. So I was like, there's no way we're getting out without somebody dying. And so they take these potions, and Remy starts doing ballet. Like, that's all he can do. He's trying to help, but he's, like, performing an entire ballet. And then Hudson takes his, and he starts talking backwards. And, like, if he tries to walk forward, he ends up walking backwards. And it was so funny. Like, everything that happened I know it was supposed to be, like, it was scary. It was terrifying, particularly the bugs. But, like, the whole time I was like, this is so unserious. We get to final level of these games, and we are facing a dinosaur. They're really down to the wire. Like, if she doesn't get out, if they don't all leave, they're all going to die, and so is everybody they know. And she's over here like, maybe the dinosaur has feelings. During this time, like, it wasn't like none of them had died at this point, because the dinosaur kills Byron and Raphael. We try to use portals against the dinosaur, and at that point the dinosaur takes one of Grace's wings, and then we're about to kill the dinosaur. And I was like, Grace, I know you feel bad, but kill the dinosaur. Like, I was like, we're so close. Luckily she didn't. Apparently the dinosaur is a child, because she looks into his eyes and sees that he's crying and that he's scared. And I was like, okay, I feel bad for the dinosaur, but like, he just killed 2 of her friends, took your wing, everybody's injured. And then he starts crying, and then he starts shrinking, and then he turns into a child. And his tears are the tears of Elios. Oh wait, it wasn't the child's tears. It was Grace's own tears for the child that were the tears of Elios. We go ask Chastain for help, because we have these tears now to hopefully help them with the poison. And she's like, Chastain, I need the gargoyle army. We're gonna go face down Cyrus, who has everything he needs to become a god. And Chastain is like, we will never follow you. Dude, it doesn't even have to, like, it's not like he even had to, like, be under her control, if that makes sense. Like, she knows that she doesn't know how to command an army. He could have just been like, okay, you can be the figurehead right now, but like, I'm running the show. And I think Grace would have taken that. And then we go to fight Cyrus anyway, because there's 10 of us and 10,000 on Cyrus's side. And then all the rest of our crew is like, hey Grace, it's time for one of your motivational speeches. My notes say, what team? Wildcats. We go fight. It's horrible. Calder dies. So like, sorry Eden. I did feel bad for Remy, because Calder and him were together a really long time in that prison. Like, they are best friends. And then like, also they sort of had a romantic dynamic. I was so confused about who was beginning a relationship in this book. Like, they were all like kind of in love with each other, but I digress. He is so upset by this that he sends out a surge of power that does similar to Hudson's power. Like, a giant ring of vampires around him die because of this surge of power. I was like, if we can do this, why are we not employing this more? And like, Grace all the time mentions this like fathomless power that Remy has. And I was like, I don't see that coming through. Like, I don't know if I like missed something, but it just didn't seem like he was doing as much as he probably could have. Jaxon gets hurt and Grace has to go heal him. And by the way, unless I heard it wrong, Jaxon is also a dragon. Probably because Nori gave him her dragon heart, but like, she specifically mentions like it's harder to heal Jaxon when he's in his dragon form. And I was like, did I? Like, what? I don't know if I like missed the moment when he transforms, or if it was just passed over so easily that I thought the narrator meant to say like Flint or something. But I was deeply confused. We're at like our most dire moment, so Hudson does the Thanos snap, and we know that if he keeps doing this, like he gets rid of a lot of people, but not everybody, and if he keeps doing it, like he's really gonna lose his soul. And so we get caught. So their powers are stolen. He doesn't manage to take all of hers because she is a demigod. Pulls on her demigod string, and she's like, I'm not gonna be afraid to do it anymore. Like, whatever about the consequences, because like everything's been taken from us anyway. The gargoyle army shows up, and I was like, wow, Chastain, like this would have helped a lot 30 minutes ago. But whatever, she messes with time. Father Time shows back up. She was like, Father Time, just go sit over there and watch this battle. And he does. Then she freezes everybody, like momentarily. And then she tells Cyrus, like, you're a fake god, you took your power. I'm like, at least a real partial god, I'm a demigod. And she shrinks him back, gives everybody their powers back, but she takes his powers too, which I assume she was able to do because she had the crown. And then she decides like, okay, I'm gonna take his powers. He's not gonna be a vampire anymore. He's gonna be human, but he's gonna be immortal. And that's gonna just mentally kill him because he hates humans and he hates not having power, and now he's gonna have both of those things for like 1,000 years. So pretty much we win. We go to see the bloodletter, which the Gargoyle King is there. Like they're mates. And so they're finally reunited. But like, why didn't the Gargoyle King help us? I didn't fully understand. I know that he's, you know, had a lot going on with being the unkillable beast and stuff, but like, it felt like he gave Grace the crown and was like, your problem, like not mine anymore. And so Grace gives her the crown, which is what like her grandfather told her to do a long time ago. We leave Cyrus in the cave with Delilah, who is now allowed to have her revenge as Grace promised. We don't exactly become friends with Isadora by the end, but like we promise like we're gonna see her. We're like, no, you're gonna come with us to this lighthouse that Hudson had to buy because Grace tried out her demigod powers in there and broke it. And she's like, you're gonna come visit us, like it doesn't have to be for long. That's like where we left that relationship, like on an upswing. Everyone's at the lighthouse to just like recoup / vacay. And Hudson tells Grace that the promise ring, this has been going on for so long, by the way, that she has this promise ring and she doesn't know what promise Hudson made her with it, like she zoned out. And he tells her, like basically a poem that he had remembered, but the gist of it was the promise was that he was gonna love her forever. And then we end the book with him telling her that unlocks something in Grace's brain. And she's like, oh, I remember everything. End of book. And I was like, okay, remember everything as in like the time you and Hudson spent trapped together in her mind while she was frozen as a gargoyle at the end of book 1? And like, I hope that's what the next book is about, because in this book, we found out that yes, they were trapped together during that 3 months, but seeing the way that time works when you're frozen, they were together for a long time before they came back and Grace had forgotten everything. Like Hudson, I think it was years. Like I think they were in a relationship for years when they came back and Grace like suddenly didn't even know who Hudson was. So we have a lot of information to cover if that's what's in the next book. And that was it. And then there were bonus chapters. They were just chapters from the book in Hudson's perspective. The narrator, I could not get over it. He sounded like Charming from Shrek. Just exactly. Like I would not be surprised to find out that this narrator was the guy who voiced Prince Charming in Shrek. It was a little hard to take seriously, I'm not gonna lie. He has a very like smooth, but because I was picturing Prince Charming saying this, I was like, this is not Hudson. That's the end of my notes. I overall really enjoyed the book. I really like this series. I think that this book in particular was unhinged in a fun way. I would love to hear what you thought about this book. I'm gonna be starting the next book as soon as possible because I do think it is going to be about their time like stuck together, and I want to see, I want to know. I get to watch them fall in love all over again, which I'm very excited about. So please like this video if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin, thanks for watching. Bye. Why can't I snap when I say it? My name's Caitlin, thanks for watching. Bye.